morning, YouTube. Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. In this one here today, we're going to be taking a look at a slight risk that we have over here towards Texas. This is just around the Texas Panhandle region. Marginal risk is also in play here, even into Oklahoma, even the small portion of Kansas and New Mexico here. Main threat today is hail. Largest threat being right around Lubbock, but the wind and tornado threat does exist from all the way to Liberal, Kansas, all the way down towards Abilene, stretching as far back as that Texas-New Mexico border once again. It even stretches as far east as Woodward, Oklahoma, and just to the west of Fort Sill. Tornado threat, albeit a marginal one, stretches from Amarillo to just south of Lubbock here. Nothing of major significance to really be concerned with at this time. I'm not too concerned with the tornado threat currently. But one thing I have found pretty interesting here is when I look at the NAM 3 kilometer and the HRRR, it kind of has a discrepancy as to when the storms are going to be initiating here. This is looking right around lunchtime. This is 18Z. Start moving forward here, and you can kind of see where these storms begin to fire because here the temperatures are advecting. This is the NAM 3 kilometer, by the way. By 23Z, you see these storms initiate. It's a little bit further to the south of where that slight risk area is, and then you see these develop through 01Z, 02, maybe even into 03, and then we're pretty much done after that point. Instability isn't necessarily limited, but it'll become more insufficient as we get into the evening and overnight hours here. But when we go to HRRR, I'm going to move this forward here all the way to 18. And you can actually see storms trying to fire earlier in the day. So right around lunchtime, we see this little complex a little bit further to the north now begin to fire. And then we do see a southern sector begin to develop a little bit later. But the question then becomes, what kind of effects could that northern sector storms, if a small MCS develops here, what will that mean for anything that develops further to the south? I tend to lean away from a tornado threat right now if something forms to the north at the moment, but there's a bunch of other bells and whistles that go into that outflow boundaries, a bunch of advanced stuff. Will it limit the instability? Will it create an outflow boundary and create a new sector for storms to fire? All that's really hard to say at this time. Nonetheless, the parameters are in place. So in total, when we look at the shortwave trough, which is really going to be the catalyst behind this setup here, this is heading into lunchtime. We're looking at the NAM. It pretty much will look the same on the HRRR and the NAM. Although you do see a little bit more of a setup leaning into southern initiation just based off this little sector right here. Go ahead and circle it for you. You can pretty much see it easily, but just in case, right over here, I left that little bean out there. It's right here as well. But pretty much this little sector right here is probably going to be where our lifting point is going to be, and our initiation point will be just off of the northeast of that. Then when we go ahead and look at HRRR, it's going to be a pretty similar deal. Although, again, it kind of leans further towards earlier initiation. I think these storms are probably going to actually fire even earlier than lunchtime based off the way this short wave is moving. We could have some morning storms, and depending on if the instability can recover, we should get some evening storms too. But it's going to be further to the north here. I would lean more towards the southern setup if we're looking towards tornadoes. Either way, I think the hail threat is going to be the main topic here, just based off of what I'm seeing with lapse rates and instability. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. We're actually taking a look at the lapse rates from the NAM 3 kilometer first, and it's pretty amped up. So this is by 23Z. This is when we would expect storms to fire based off of this model run here. You can see lapse rates at about 7.9 to 8.0, which is really high, and look at the result. Crazy lapse rates. Very good surface cape, by the way. There's even some notable downward cape So this could have a little bit of damaging wind potential, but I'm mainly thinking hail is going to be the big threat here. Surprisingly, there's no analog matches, but you don't technically need them. That just goes off of previous storms that were able to produce weak to significant hail. That being said, progress this a little later into the evening, and those lapse rates are going to hang around. So the hail threat's going to be persistent into even the overnight, possibly, if these storms can find sufficient instability. We'll take a look at that in a second. HRRR kind of paints a different story. This is a sounding I was looking at about 20Z. The storms fire earlier, and as a result, the hail threat exists earlier into the day. But look what happens as we go later into the evening here. When I go towards this area, you would think, okay, this is where the storms are going to be. Right over here is going to be a stable area. When I click a sounding on this, you're going to see pretty much nothing. There you go. Strong cap comes into play late into the evening here over this region and ends up limiting storm potential. Storms also get very elevated, and as a result, next to nothing going on here. It's plenty of downward cape, but the cap gets so strong, these storms are not going to be able to maintain themselves or fire in this region. So that being said here, the window for the HRRR seems to be earlier, or the trend on the HRRR seems to be earlier storms, later getting cut off by a cap, whereas we're kind of a little bit more open season, a little bit more of a hotter setup with the NAM 3 kilometer. When we look at instability, it seems like the HRRR is going to be a little bit more limited with that. Like this sector to this little MCS that's likely to develop here is going to use up a lot of the instability based off of what I'm seeing here. And by the time we look at storms trying to fire to the south, these storms are most likely going to have little to work with here. And then as far as the 3 kilometers concerned, we'll go ahead and switch to the mixed layer cape here. The cape is most likely going to persist here. If I can get it to go. Yeah, cape persists once we get towards 22Z and then towards 23 and into OOZ. There's actually even stronger layer here. I am interested in that. I think I clicked the wrong spot. No, I didn't. There's actually some pretty good damaging wind potential with this setup here. There's not much of a cap in place with that one. So if the NAM 3 kilometer scenario plays out for Mo6Z, then I anticipate a little bit more storm coverage, a little bit more intense storms. Again, tornado threat's relatively limited, but nonetheless, could be open season here. And here's the first tour sounding that we'll see on the video here. Again, like I said, kinematics are not the most impressive by any stretch of the imagination here, but nonetheless, potential does exist. I really lean more so towards hail, as indicated by lapse rates here, and then damaging winds as well. Well, that being said, I'm going to get ready to go to work here, so I hope you enjoyed this video. You know what to do. Hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, decimate that share button. But anyway, guys, I hope you have a good day. You guys take care of yourselves. It's Tyler Metalhead Weatherman. I'll probably see you tonight.